Welcome to episode 133 of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. It's the holiday edition, the Christmas edition. We're recording this on Wednesday the 23rd, so it's the Festivus edition as well. Although, based on the way the Ravens played, there probably won't be that many airing of grievances today on the podcast. But nonetheless, I hope everyone out there is doing well, everyone's safe. All of our loyal listeners are enjoying the holiday season as best they can. And we got a gift for you, a podcast episode. So put this on Christmas Eve, around the Festivus pole, around the Christmas tree, whatever. I got Jake here with me, and like I said, there's not a lot of negative to talk about with this Ravens game against the Jaguars. You know, they went in, they handled their business, walked away with a blowout win, 40-14. Defense was good, offense was good, everything was just, it looked like a well-oiled machine. We could nitpick here and there for negatives, but for the most part, when we talk about this game, it's probably going to be pretty positive. And I guess I want to start on defense. I feel like we always start on offense. Start on defense because they had a really rough time last Monday against the Browns. Just the Ravens win the game, so that's all that matters. But you watch that game, and as exciting as it was, you're concerned about the defense because it's a back-and-forth effort. And when Lamar went out, you're thinking, we got a 14-point lead. This isn't good that he's out of the game. But this defense should be able to hold that 14-point lead. They didn't. And in the end, the Ravens end up holding the ball last, so they win. But there were concerns, run defense, pass defense, the whole thing. Injuries mounting up, injuries being there for weeks on weeks on weeks. And that continued into this week. Marcus Peters didn't play, Jimmy Smith didn't play, Calais Campbell actually didn't play after some build-up this week that he would potentially be going against his former team. He did not suit up. So different level of concern for those three guys and elsewhere, but overall, defense was able to get back on track, put together a good effort. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing super exciting because, again, it is the Jaguars. They only had one win at this point, 12 straight losses. We talked about it, though. They have some talent at receiver. Their rookie running back he's been doing some good things this year. But when you only have one win, you can't be too threatened by what the opposing team presents to you in terms of offense or defense. I don't care how many games were close even that they lost. You're not that good and you're not that threatening if you're 1-12. Nonetheless, defensively, I'm looking in the secondary. Guys like Anthony Averett, Tramon Williams stepping up pretty nicely, filling the void. No real glaring issues. Run defense was stout. Derek Wolfe continued to do his thing. Brandon Williams is back. He seems to be 100%. He's doing well. Pass rush got going. I mean, there's a lot to like about this defensive effort, but I think the pass rush leads the way. Jake, what stood out to you defensively in this one? There's some individual efforts we can get into for sure. But was it the pass rush or was it something else on this defense that stood out?
Yeah, it was kind of all over the board, like you mentioned. I feel bad for Campbell, obviously, not being able to play against his former team. We saw that happen to Dez Bryant, and I think, his was much more depressing, I guess, for him because it was, he hadn't been playing for a couple of years. Campbell's been playing for a long time, but, obviously didn't get the opportunity to play against one of his former teams, and you feel bad for that. But absolutely, the pass rush did stand out. Nice of, unique Ngakoue to finally show up. We saw him with multiple sacks and quarterback hits in the game, was responsible for one of the fumbles that the Ravens forced that got turned over. So he certainly made his presence felt. And that's certainly, as we've been discussing in previous weeks, that's a good sign. You certainly hope that keeps up. You would have liked to have seen that against some of the more competitive teams that the Ravens have been facing over the last month or so. But, better now than never. And, he showed up in a big way and had a nice exchange with John Harbaugh, which I'm sure we'll get into later as well. We'll get into that more. But Judon showing up too. That was a question too that I had, because I barely paid attention to the Pro Bowl nominations, and I know it doesn't matter, but how did Matt Judon make the Pro Bowl? He's tied for 45th in the NFL with 5 sacks.
I have no idea. I mean, he even said, I think the media talked to him, and he said, you look at last year I made my first Pro Bowl, and you look at my numbers last year compared to this year, he said he was surprised to see that he got it.
Well, credit to him for at least acknowledging that. And we shouldn't even, I just had to bring, because I was so blown away by it. I mean, I looked at I know they're not even playing the game, and it doesn't, the Pro Bowl is meaningless anyway, but the other 6 Ravens that made it all had arguments for being in there. So I don't really think Judon had one. So I thought that was kind of unique that he was really the one that stuck out. But I give a lot of credit to Anthony Averett too. I mean, we had, Jimmy Smith and Marcus Peters both out. He didn't, I know it was against Jacksonville, and their offense is nothing special. They've got some good pieces at receiver. And I think, now that they're in line to draft Lawrence, I think if they, get the right pieces in place and build a nice offense around him, they could be competitive in a few years. But I give Anthony Averett a lot of credit for stepping in, starting on an outside role, not just a slot corner. He was, out there most of the game. And even Devontae Harris went down with the hamstring injury too, and he's now on IR. They did activate Geno Stone off the COVID list, so that gives them another defensive back. But hats off to him for Averett for playing the entire game and not being a liability in coverage. Another kind of silly social media thing, along with the Judon Pro Bowl nomination. That's not really a social media thing, but the Ravens Twitter account going crazy for Patrick Queen as the defensive rookie of the year. Have you heard Chase Young, guys? I understand, those guys work for the team, and it's like they're the PR agency of the team, but don't make a stupid statement like that. Unless Young suffers a devastating injury, tears his Achilles or AC. I mean, he still might win defensive rookie of the year, even if that happens over the next 2 weeks, and Washington might make the playoffs. I don't want to go on a rant about social media, but it's one of the several reasons why I only have Snapchat, and that is the only form of social media communication aside from LinkedIn. I can't do it. I can't stand Juju Smith-Schuster dancing on logos. TikTok is, I'll save that for later, but I don't want to get too off base. But Patrick Queen played a great game. Sacks in the backfield constantly, hits left and right, and I give him a lot of credit. He had some ups and downs in September and October, but he's really come along, and I've really been impressed with him. And I do think he does deserve some credit. I think it would be an outstanding story if he were to be the defensive rookie of the year, considering he had 1 year of starting experience in college before he got to the pros. But even though he's played certainly really great over the last month or so, I don't really think he's edged Chase Young for the defensive rookie of the year.
So I think Ngakoue made some of the biggest impact plays, but as far as best performance, if we'll award that, I will give it to Patrick Queen. I think this is one of those games where he really flashes what he will be in the future. And this is what I want to give him credit for, is because I agree with you. I don't think he is the defensive rookie in the year. I think his name is around that circle. He's might be in the conversation just because of how spread out his stat sheet is, with interception, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, some sacks, tackles for loss. I mean, he's kind of spread out. He's doing a lot of stuff, a little bit of everything, so to speak. But you look at, the situation he's thrown into. First-round pick for a defense that has no stability at inside linebacker. It's really the biggest weak spot coming into the season on a top 5 defense the past 2 years, the inside linebacker position. And last year you got a lot out of guys like LJ Fort, Josh Bynes, came in and just really held it down for you. But moving forward, you want to get, a guy that either you draft or someone you sign young that becomes the guy for years to come, not just the guy that's there for a year or two. And then they drafted Patrick Queen to be that guy. But again, not only was there a lot of expectations with that pick and the scenario he's coming into, but then, you have all this COVID stuff, so there's no formal training camp, there's no actual preseason, And his first real game reps are week 1 against the Browns. And that is just an incredibly difficult situation to be put in. Any rookie that's making a start week 1 this year. And I think that will show you, whoever wins offensive and defensive rookie of the year this year, it's those guys deserve even more credit, I think, for being able to adapt so quickly. And look, for Queen, it hasn't been a solid all-around year. It hasn't been the most consistent. He's had his highs. He's had his lows. This week was certainly a high, maybe one of the highest, one of his best games. But I think, moving into year 2, I am so happy with where he is at as a player. The Raven, for investing a first-round pick in somebody, you want to see it in year 1. You want to see him out there. Maybe not as a starter every down like Queen is. Again, that was situational with the depth that the Ravens had, but to see him out there consistently, to see him making plays, to see him in games like this where he flashes like that veteran starter who has all the instincts. He's sniffing out plays. His one sack was on 4th down, stopped Minshew as he was trying to get around the edge and maybe scramble for a first down. That's a turnover on downs right there. It's just he's flying all around the field. I mean, he was everywhere, on Sunday. So it's games like that give you a lot of hope for his future. Forget the defensive rookie of the year conversation, but how do you feel about him going into year 2? Hopefully next year there'll be an actual training camp, maybe a preseason game or 2. I don't know what the NFL is actually going to do with the preseason. There's been talks about cutting it down for years now. So we'll see. But an actual formal offseason, no COVID nonsense to really disrupt things. I think the sky's the limit for him to take just a huge jump from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just Queen too. I mean, I know, Malik Harrison has kind of fallen off the face of the earth since he, got into some games early in the season. But, I know Fort was on the COVID list too and had that injury, but that entire group, I mean, Queen, Fort, Harrison at the beginning of the season, and, he certainly has room to improve. And even Chris Ford's gotten on the field a lot lately in some pass coverage situations. And we've seen him, sort of come off of special teams and have more of a presence in games and pass coverage. And he's certainly done a great job. And that was really one of the weakest areas of the Ravens roster heading into this season. So the future certainly does bode well. And it's kind of crazy when you think about, how quickly Queen's rise to the NFL was when we think about how little actual game experience he had compared to most players that come out in spots similar to his. So yeah, a full off season. I'm not really sure what the COVID situation is going to be. I certainly would, think with the season of going through this and more planning going into next season that even if the pandemic still is an issue, the NFL certainly has some time to put more protocols and plans into for how to navigate through this and adjust as we hopefully come out of this at some point in this next year. I think the sky's the limit for Patrick Queen, and hopefully the 2021 draft class isn't going to have to put up with nearly what the 2020 class did this year. And
Ngakoue, real quick on him, a little bit more. I know you said a little bit about him, but this is the first time he's actually gotten a quarterback on the ground. He had been credited with a sack, I think, against the Titans, but it came on a tip pass, or he got in there and knocked the ball out. So it was a forced fumble, if I remember correctly, credited with the sack, but he didn't actually, tackle the guy. So this was his first actual sack, added a forced fumble. Solid game from him. Looked like he was actually beating his guy on the left side there on a consistent basis. There's been some weeks recently where that wasn't even the case. When he first got here, he had some games where he was just wreaking havoc one-on-one against the left tackle, and he had nothing to show for it. The ball was getting out just in time. He was close but couldn't get home, that sort of thing. But, you watch the film, he's winning his matchups. And then, you have a couple weeks later where, he's non-existent. he's not even winning that one-on-one matchup. So it got very concerning with him. We discussed it at length on the podcast. It's been a huge topic of discussion around the Ravens this year, down the second half here, is his lack of production. And he has a breakout game here against this former team. They're not great. This isn't the matchup that gives you a huge boost of confidence for him moving forward. But look, we know who Ngakoue is. Coming in, to the Ravens, not only did he have 5 sacks before he got here with the Vikings, but his track record prior to that was very consistent. This was not a Matt Judon type of situation where he's hot and cold and the sacks come in bunches, or he has a good year and then he has a bad year. He was consistent every single year. So that almost made what he's done as a Raven even more surprising and even more disappointing, is the fact that when the Ravens traded for this guy, there really wasn't anything's a possibility, but I don't think it really crossed anyone's mind that, hey, this guy who's been so damn consistent from his rookie year to 2020, that he's just going to fall off the face of the earth. And it's almost like he's not out there. So that was a shock to all of us. Real quick on Ngakoue, I know we talked about it before, but do you think it's like his consistency in the past, the fact that we kind of know what his ceiling is and he should be close to that, makes him a more attractive guy to sign over Judon or Bowser? Or do you think that they have money to pay 2 of those 3?
I don't think they have money to pay 2 of them. If they didn't have all these massive contracts, probably, or on the horizon, all these massive contracts, they probably would. But I think that, financially, it would be wise of them to try to focus on one. And hey, who knows? Maybe you could get Pernell McPhee back for another year. And he's certainly played so much better than I ever thought possible at this point of his career. I certainly will want to give him a lot of credit too. I think he deserves a lot of praise, even if he isn't like an every down pass rusher anymore. If it's still up to me, though, Ngakoue, if they can afford him, if there's whether or not he wants to stay local in Maryland and take a couple of dollars less than what he would somewhere else. I know that kind of sounds silly, but I guess if you're in a situation where, it's one of the best teams in terms of being a franchise to play for in the NFL, and it's close to your hometown, the Ravens certainly give you the opportunity to do that. And I know that Ngakoue, since he's been traded, hasn't been the player that he was in Minnesota or that he was in Jacksonville, that consistent player, not always in double-digit sacks, but was getting you sacks consistently. And it's kind of taken him some time to do that here since he's been traded. But he has that track record of a guy that's consistently gotten sacks. And Judon has gotten sacks too, but it took him a couple of years to get to that 9.5 sack mark. I think he had 1 or 2 years ago, and that was when they had, a future Hall of Famer Terrell Suggs on the other side. And I can't remember how many sacks he had off the top of my head last year. It might have been 8 or 9, around the same he had from a year ago. But when we looked at what this pass rush was with Judon as the lead guy before Ngakoue got here, not very impressive at all. I know what Judon is. I also know what Tyus Bowser is, and I just don't believe that any of those guys can put up consistent numbers like Ngakoue has shown that he can do in the past. It's all about sample size. And I understand that Judon has been in the league 1 year longer than Ngakoue has, but in terms of looking at all these players over the years, Ngakoue has been the one that's consistently put up numbers. He's had the most sacks over that period of time. I know it's taken him some time lately here to kind of get into a groove. It's kind of been bad timing. I'm not making excuses for him at all. But I think he's a better player than what we've seen so far this year. And it's a shame that it hasn't, it hasn't turned into what we expected. But hey, who knows? If there is an opportunity for Ngakoue to stay in Baltimore, and he's more willing to do that than what maybe you and me think, then maybe the kind of underwhelming sample size we saw from him this year that might just be like an anomaly. Maybe that helps the Ravens afford him. But to answer your question, I think they can and only should keep one. And if it's up to me, I think I would try to keep Ngakoue. And honestly, behind him, it might be Bowser, because I think he'll be cheaper than Judon. And I don't think that Bowser is that far behind Judon. I know Judon's been more of a every down player. But I don't think Bowser's that far behind. And I think if you give Bowser another year, I'm not saying he's going to be an every down player, but he can be an asset for you. I feel like I've seen what I've seen from Judon, and I know what I'm getting out of him. I still think there's more to be seen from Bowser. But yeah, I would definitely try to. My stance isn't changing, barring like a significant injury to one of those guys. Ngakoue is the one I want this offseason if the Ravens can figure out a way to keep him around.
All right, let's go to the offense. Lamar Jackson, another MVP-like performance. Since returning from the COVID list, he's been the driving force. He's been that MVP type of guy. This team goes where he goes. And, the Cowboys game last week especially really made a huge impact with his legs. Defenses just had no answer. Cowboys or Browns had no answer for him on the ground. This week, he did most of his damage through the air. 243 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Not the highest rushing total, 35 rushing yards on 10 attempts, but he did add a rushing touchdown. So 4 total touchdowns in this game. That is the most he has had in a game this year, and the most since Week 15 of last year, where he had 5 passing touchdowns against the Jets. So a full league calendar year, Week 15 last year to Week 15 this year. Passer rating, 133.1. Second best of the season. Only better one was Week 1 against the Browns. So this was, by all means, one of his best performances this year. Really, the only mistake from him was that opening drive, the interception. And at the time that he threw that, you don't like it because it's your first drive, and it almost feels like it kills all the momentum, and it gives Jacksonville a shot in the arm. And now they think, hey, we can hang around. We might be able to pull off an upset. Just a ball that should not have been thrown. I'm not going to dwell on this long because it's something that I feel like we've said before. It is a little concerning because it was an issue, the Patriots game, the Titans game, just balls that should not have been thrown. And this was another one. I believe Marquise Brown was the target. It's double coverage. You can clearly see the safety coming over. The corner had pretty good leverage too. He wasn't way out of position. So you're throwing into double coverage. It's Marquise Brown. You know what's going to happen. Best case scenario, this ball gets batted down, this ball gets overthrown. There's no legit scenario where you throw up a jump ball to Marquise Brown and he's going to make the play over 2 defenders. It's just not going to happen. I'm sick of this ball being thrown by Lamar. But again, I can't dwell on it too much because after that, he was lights out, made pretty much every play, didn't turn the ball over again, almost had that fumble, but we can get into Tyree Phillips. How about that run that he had? That almost was a turnover there that Lamar had, but Tyree Phillips saved the day. We'll get into the rest of the offense real quick, but Lamar Jackson, I think I said, this team goes where he goes, and right now he's really turning it on. You look at the last 3 weeks, their 3-game win streak, he's been leading the way. Like I said, he looks like that MVP, that driving force behind this Ravens offense the last 3 weeks. And, perhaps he's turning it on. This entire team is turning it on. Things seem to be gelling into place at the perfect time.
Yeah, and an observation, in my hours of podcast preparation this morning, that I kind of thought was, if that Jackson first drive interception, if that happened in a game like in October or November, I have a feeling the Ravens probably let the Jaguars hang around a lot longer in the game than they did on Sunday. But I think this team is just light years of where it was a couple of weeks, even, a month ago. I credit to, it's important to, you're right. You don't want to dwell on it. It's annoying that it keeps happening, but the positive to come out of that entire situation is, like you said, after that, it was lights out for Lamar. I think, if this team was still struggling the way it was a month ago, I think those struggles may have continued, and it might have been a mental thing. I mean, who knows? This team was just in such a bad spot a month ago. They had COVID, they had everything, they had all these injuries going on. So I think it really says, in a short amount of time how far this team has improved, how far this team has come since that rough 3-game stretch that they had. And to go back to that Phillips play too, is he okay? Because I know he went into concussion protocol after that, but I didn't follow up to see if he actually got a concussion or not. Like, is he playing this weekend, or is he still questionable? Like, do we know if he's all right?
I actually haven't heard anything concrete, but I'm gonna assume he's okay just based on the response to that run, everything, the way it's been talked about, the videos of it, and his response to it. I think even after the game, he tweeted something like, "I probably shouldn't have done that, but it was exciting," or something like that. So he seemed like he was okay after the game.
I did see the video too. I think it might be, I don't know if Wired's come out yet, but there was a really cool clip of going back to Ngakoue after it happened on the sideline, like, because Harbaugh's standing right next to him, and he turns to Harbaugh and he's like, "In all your years, coach, have you ever seen anything like that?" And then they're going on the field because Harbaugh's standing over Tyree on the field because he was getting evaluated by the team doctors, and he's standing next to Miles Jack. And he was talking to him. He's like, I didn't want to hit him. I just had to, go at him with my shoulder just because of how big he was. And he was complimenting Phillips, and the Ravens teammates, the offensive linemen, were going crazy about how, they practiced that drill and how he had the ball security technique like locked down to a T. You typically don't see that from an offensive lineman. Maybe it helps him that he's a rookie and a younger guy that can, his body hasn't completely fallen apart yet from a big offensive lineman body standpoint. But yeah, that was amazing. I mean, just watching that on TV too, it's just incredible to see how much bigger like an offensive lineman carrying the ball looks as compared to like a guy like Lamar Jackson. Just absolutely insane. It was literally like a car crash, and that's probably why he had to go into the protocols, because he literally got drilled in the shoulder, neck, helmet area, like in the sides 3 separate times going to the ground. So the fact that he was on Twitter 2 hours after the game probably says he's okay, but yeah, definitely glad to see him get back up okay from that. But yeah, that was a great internet moment too to be made out of that play for sure.
And a different side of the ball, but still a big man. Takes me back to the days of Kelly Gregg scooping up a fumble and shuffling. I'm not going to say running. I'll say shuffling his way down the field. It gave me
gracefully,
very graceful. This, I don't know. This, we might be a little biased here because it's our guy, but maybe one of the best big man runs we've seen in a while.
Well, that was their longest run of the day, wasn't it? I think that the 22-yard run by him was their longest run.
The Ravens' longest run of the day, but usually every year you see one or two, a handful of big man runs like that, whether they sub somebody in on the goal line and do something like that, but or a fumble recovery, whatever it is. This is one of the best ones, the most exciting ones, because he's not fast, but he had some open space to build up some momentum, and you knew he was gonna get positive yards out of it, and then all of a sudden you see, all right, somebody's gonna catch him eventually, or he's gonna run into somebody, but by the time that happens, he's gonna be cruising. So it's gonna be a big collision here, and there's a great picture, from I guess that end zone that he was running towards. It's a great zoomed in picture of him running, and the look on his face is just the perfect mix of excitement and fear. Like, I shouldn't be doing this. This is exciting though. This is crazy, but I'm scared. I don't know what's about to happen. I've never done this before.
Not to cut you off, but real quick, this 2 seconds. Speaking of people doing things that they don't normally do, Gus Edwards catching that 34-yard strike from Lamar before his last touchdown run. I mean, I've never seen them go target Gus like that in the passing game. That was unique for sure.
Yeah, usually that's not a pass the Ravens do a lot to really any running back. Let alone Gus Edwards, who is not
right. Him of all of them too.
Right. He's not I think he's probably 4th on the list in terms of catching passes out of the backfield. I would put Justice Hill even ahead of him.
I don't know if he's ever caught a pass before. Like, I'd have to look that up real quick.
Probably a check down. Maybe I think that'd be at some point he has to have been the safety valve or something. But yeah, that was, and it kind of leads to what I was getting at here with Lamar in the passing game. You give him all the credit in the world, but how about these receivers? Really, they as a group put together a complete day. And, Marquise Brown did not find the end zone, but 6 receptions on 7 targets. That one target was the interception. So at 98 yards, Marquise Brown had a great day. They connected on a deep ball late in the game. Had not seen that in weeks. Lamar, really one of the few times this year Lamar has actually hit Marquise Brown on a deep pass where he had clear separation. The timing, everything about that play was perfect. Down the sideline, Marquise getting his feet in bounds, just perfect. And hopefully we see more of that moving forward, because I thought we were going to see that consistently this year. Has not been the case, but have to give Marquise Brown credit. It has not been a great season for him. We know that. People have been really down on him. And I can't blame him. The expectations were so high, and it's not even that he didn't meet the expectations, but he wasn't doing the little things. He wasn't catching easy passes, wide open passes, just dropping them, bouncing off his chest, bouncing off his hands. It's the little things like that were very concerning with him, but he comes back, makes the biggest play of the week last week with the touchdown. This week, just shy of 100 yards on 6 receptions, didn't have a drop at all, no concerns of that. And even that one play in the first half, caught a pass across the middle, and, he turns to his left, sees Dez Bryant racing there, and he kind of runs backwards a little bit, gives Dez Bryant time to race in front of him and lead block for him. Just great plays like that, where even something like last year when he had the screw in his foot, he might catch that pass, it's a first down, and he'll go down, not try to push it or anything. But even this year it was annoying. He'll catch passes across the middle, and he doesn't try to use that speed. He just kind of goes down easily. But that play was, I think, exactly what we want to see out of Marquise Brown. He gets some space across the middle, finds a way to use his feet to give himself a little extra time, and then wait for that big-bodied receiver, Dez Bryant, Miles Boykin, whoever it is, get down there and block for him and get some extra yards out of this. So that was just a great all-around day for Marquise. But the one that has made the biggest waves, Dez Bryant, only 1 reception, but 11 yards for a touchdown. The first time he found the end zone in 3 years. And he was able to throw up the X again. No fans in the stands, a little weird for him, probably to throw up the X and not have anyone in the stands going crazy, but still a great moment. You saw the reception from all the other offensive players, Harbaugh, the coaches, the defensive players, really this whole team, their response to that play. It just great to see. All the credit in the world goes to Dez Bryant. We said it back when he was able to, not only get signed, that was a huge moment, signed to the practice squad, and then a month later, however long later it was, to be promoted and signed to the active roster, that was huge as well. And every step of the way, it's just been more impressive for him. And, he hasn't been the most productive. They haven't found a way to get him super involved. But this play in particular, not only was it a great moment for him with the touchdown, but a play where Lamar had a lot of time in the pocket. He's hanging in there, waiting for somebody to get open. That was prime Dez Bryant right there. A play that's lasting a little longer than you expected. All the receivers ran their initial route. Now you're just freestyling. That's Dez Bryant in his prime, finding a way to get open in the end zone, making the catch, coming up with the big play.
Yeah, and it was hard too. It's hard not to get emotional seeing a guy score a touchdown for the first time in a couple of years, and you could see just clearly how much it really meant to him. He mentioned, being a dad now and his daughter, really wanting to see him play, and then to score another touchdown. Really happy for him that he was able to. It sucks that he wasn't able to play against his former team, and who knows if he would have caught a touchdown there. But great to see him finally get in the end zone for the first time since both of us were in college. So goes to show how long ago that was. I did double check, and Gus Edwards has 15 career receptions, so I was a little off, but it's something that they haven't done often. And yeah, certainly that's one thing I really liked is, even though Marquise is expected to be the Ravens' top receiver, He had a great game, second highest receiving total with 98 yards. It's his highest total on the season since week 1, which was 101 yards. But nice. Even though it was only like Dez, you said, had one reception. I can't remember if Boykin had another reception other than his touchdown, but good spreading the ball around to different guys. Boykin, Dez, who are really, I mean, those guys have been compared, I mean, left and right since Dez has gotten there, and just in terms of being like a physical bot, like a similar body styles in which they play. But yeah, wait for Lamar to score 4 total touchdowns, as you said, move the ball around to 3 different receivers and score the 1 touchdown on his own. I think another guy too that we haven't talked about yet that deserves a lot of credit, and he wasn't even playing on Sunday, which is, it's kind of funny to say he deserves some credit, but I do think that Mark Ingram deserves a lot of praise for how he is being very classy in the way he's handling this his journey to the 4th running back spot and being a healthy scratch on Sunday. And, you know, it's not that it's not that he's not talented, because I certainly think that Ingram still has the ability to play in the NFL as not maybe a starting running back, but a number 2 guy. I think he's got maybe 2 or 3 years left in him. It's not like he's washed up or anything, but the fact that he doesn't play special teams, and Justice Hill, since he's gotten off the injured list or whatever and has gotten to play this year, has really took Chris Moore's spot as being a guy on special teams. As almost every time the Ravens have punted the ball, he seems to be right there waiting for the punt returner to receive the ball and always ready. It seems like he's kind of competing with Chris Moore as being like the top. Well, I guess this year he would be, because Chris Moore has barely played. But the fact that Mark Ingram doesn't play special teams, that obviously means that, you know, Justice Hill does have some value there. And at this point, you know, because he's talented, if the Ravens have one injury over the next couple of weeks to Dobbins or Edwards, I mean, you certainly hope that doesn't happen. But Mark Ingram still has a very important role on this team. He's still practicing very hard. He's still a leader. He's still being a guy on the sidelines, getting the guys all juiced up. I'm sure he's been a really nice mentor for J.K. Dobbins. He still has a lot of value to this team, and not all the time do you see veterans like him, especially like running back over the age of 30. It's for a running back, anytime you're around his age, it's just got to be so tough to keep lasting in this league. And I give him so much credit for sticking this out. And I do think that he still has a future in this league somewhere else. And hopefully he gets to go to a competitive place and be like a nice piece to help a team build towards something bigger. That'd be nice to see, because he's been such an important part of what the Ravens have done here over the last 2 years since he's been here.
Yeah, I don't think you'll encounter anyone who doesn't like Mark Ingram. It's impossible not to like him. But with that being said, it can be tough on him, perhaps, especially after the year he had last year. It was a really kind of a renaissance for him almost. You know, he'd been in the league for a while, but he played number 2 to Kamara for a while, and he was a good number 2. And then he comes here, and he's kind of the go-to guy. I think I described him as a bowling ball rolling downhill. I mean, that's how he runs when he's rolling. And I don't want to say it takes like a severe mental toll on a player, but for someone who's been a starter, for someone who's been in the league as long as he has, it might get to you. But I think he understands, you know, where this team is going. And if there's ever been a guy that's always about the team before himself, it's Mark Ingram. I mean, everything on the sidelines, you know, if he's not signed to the active roster, you know, maybe the Ravens create just a hype man position and throw him some change, throw him a little extra money to stay on the sidelines and just be a hype man. You know, it was just a couple weeks ago we were complaining, why is Ingram starting? Why do you have to force feed him a couple carries to start every game? Just let Dobbins and Edwards roll from the jump, get off to a hot start. You know, don't risk having a 3-and-out on your first drive. Don't waste any time getting your best guys into a rhythm. The fact that we're here in Week 15, 3 wins in a row, Lamar is rolling like we said, but then you look at the running back core, Dobbins, Edwards are the go-to guys. Dobbins is getting better and better every week. He's getting a bigger role week after week. This is a great sign. You know, it sucks for Mark Ingram, but for the team as a whole, this is a great sign. And just another reason why, you know, there's more confidence, at least from me, and I know I'm not alone here. I have way more confidence in this offense right now. Some of that has to go to Greg Roman, too, who was a punching bag for a lot of the season, but if the play calling, if everything is in sync, if they look like a well-oiled machine, like they did at times last year, where it's not about putting up the points they did last year. It's not about just running up the score every week and blowing teams out. It's just about being efficient, about looking like a competent offense that can push the ball, and whenever you need a touchdown drive, they can get it. So we're getting closer to that the later we get into the season.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind, too, that some of the stuff, I mean, Ingram shouldn't feel bad or anything about what's happened. I mean, a lot of the stuff, the factors that are leading to this are out of his control. I mean, people forget he had that high ankle sprain against the Eagles. I mean, a high ankle sprain for a running back, and then he went on the COVID list. He got COVID. So, like, a lot of this hasn't been his fault. He kind of got, duped in a way with everything going on. The injury certainly didn't help things. And I think that was kind of the beginning of the end. But he shouldn't feel bad about any of this. And I think he's a mature guy. He understands what's happening. And it's not like he has, as great as last year was, it was his first season here. And it's not like he has, roots playing into Baltimore or anything. He's still a relatively new guy to Baltimore. So maybe that's something going into it, too, is he's not like a long-term guy who's been here for years and has been a staple of this team and isn't, overly emotional about everything that's going on. But I do give him a lot of credit for not only being classy in the way he's handled it, but continuing to be the same guy that he was before. I think that's the key thing here is he hasn't changed anything about himself. And that's certainly, I think Harbaugh certainly has to be very pleased with that and very impressed with him. And I do think even if Mark Ingram does leave the Ravens after really only one successful season here, I do think that Harbaugh and the fans will still have a great affinity for him even after he's gone.
Absolutely. One last thing on Dez Bryant. What do you think his role is? Maybe not his role, but what kind of impact do you think he can have the rest of the season, rest of the regular season? And again, if they make the playoffs, what kind of impact can he have? Because, the play he made on Sunday, like I said, the scramble after running your initial route, freestyle, get open, catch the pass. That's kind of, I think that's a unique skill that Dez Bryant brings. And I don't think the volume of catches is going to go, through the roof or anything. But if the Ravens, when they're in the red zone, I know they're probably a run-first team. And, if your run game is working the way it has been at times this year, especially the last couple weeks, go to the run by all means. But when you're in the red zone, having Dez Bryant out there, the threat of him in the red zone, even if that just takes some attention away that would normally be put towards Mark Andrews, I think that's huge. If the defense has to look at your offense lining up there in the red zone and they can't just immediately say, all right, let's jam Mark Andrews, let's double team him, let's make sure that he doesn't get open in the end zone because that's Lamar's go-to guy. If they have to allocate some more attention to somebody like Dez Bryant, that's only going to be a net positive. So I think he's a guy they could use more in the red zone, and even if it's not a huge impact that he's having, it could have some lingering, some side effects, some positive ones, some side effects for the rest of the offense. But I'm not expecting him to have any games where he's got 7-8 catches, close to 100 yards. I'm not expecting that at all. Would like to see a couple more targets thrown his way. He did have 3 targets. I don't know how many of those were actually catchable, but I don't know. Develop into more of a red zone threat. I mean, that's only going to be a positive for this team.
Yeah, Dez Bryant is not catching 10 passes for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns in games anymore, but what he can do is do exactly what he did on Sunday, just be a red zone presence. If the Ravens just use him in red zone situations and even like a 3rd and 5 or 3rd and short, maybe even 3rd and 8 situation, if they're, you need that first down and, it's either between Dez and Boykin and you need a first down and Dez is the open one, give it to him and have that big body go up and get that ball. You're right. It's not going to be like he's constantly getting targets throughout the game, but if he can just be a red zone target, help them move the sticks and mentor the guys on the sideline and be that leader for them, that'll help him more than anything else. And it's not only the fact that, Dez hasn't played in 3 years and he's a receiver in his 30s now. it's not just that. I mean, the Ravens offense, it's just not designed to feed receivers constantly. So, let alone one of the 4 receivers or whatever. So it seems like Dez has been understanding of that since the get-go. I mean, at that point, it was the Ravens or nothing. So he wanted an opportunity regardless of where it's at. So even if he's not going to get the bulk targets, I just think that being on the field again, being able to play for his daughter now, and just being able to be back in the game, not only as a player, but as a mentor for the Ravens' very young receiving core aside from Willie Snead. I think that's a big benefit. And hopefully he can just continue to be a positive influence on the Ravens offense.
One last thing before we look ahead. Tyler Huntley making his NFL debut as the backup quarterback in this one. RG3 still out. We saw Trace McSorley went down in the Cleveland game right before Lamar came back for that 4th down play. So Tyler Huntley promoted from practice squad quarterback to backup quarterback in this one, and because it was a blowout, he got to see a little action at the end of the game. Good for him. I got to be honest, Lamar even said as much last week or earlier this week. We've been keeping this guy under wraps. We've been keeping him a secret. And the fact that we didn't have an actual preseason this year, I think that has only helped them hide him, so to speak. But when he stepped foot on the field and they ran that read option and he took off up the middle, I had no idea that he had those legs. I had no idea that he had that kind of speed. I didn't even know what style of quarterback he was. I thought he was a pocket passer, to be honest with you. Or just a generic type of pocket passing quarterback. I didn't know that he ran the read option and he was, extremely fast. Like he could challenge Lamar in a foot race probably. That was a great moment for him. And then Lamar just going crazy on the sideline for him. Both of them Florida guys that played against each other in high school. I think it does raise an interesting question, like, does this pretty much spell the end of RG3? Like, this is the last year of his contract in Baltimore. He's pretty much done, right? Like, the Ravens are going to roll with McSorley and Huntley as their backups.
Well, I don't know, Nolan. If any Penn State fan you talk to will tell you that McSorley can be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Well, the fact that I'm even confidently saying, yeah, I trust McSorley as a backup, that is light years ahead of where I was going into the season. I'll say that. I mean, I was very skeptical about him. So the fact that I'm willing to anoint him the Ravens' backup, I think, is pretty big.
I definitely think that RG3 is out, and I do think that the backup job will be McSorley's or Huntley's going into next year. I think that's going to be the quarterback battle. It'll be interesting to see what happens there because I definitely think, it all depends. I mean, the Ravens should hope that Tyler Huntley doesn't see the field anymore this season because the more game tape he gets out there, the more other teams are going to be interested in either him or McSorley. And I mean, I guess the hope next year, if there's still COVID going on, especially, would be that you can keep 3 quarterbacks. So I would still expect McSorley to be the backup. But if Huntley actually did look that impressive before the preseason, who knows? He's known Lamar for years. I didn't even know they played each other in high school. That's a really cool story. I remember hearing about that on Sunday. And that they're a very similar quarterback. I think Huntley resembles Jackson more than McSorley does. I could be wrong about that because they both played so little. But yeah, very impressive. And, him and McSorley in their very, very limited opportunities have not looked bad. So I do think that it'll be interesting to see, assuming those 2 guys are the 2 quarterbacks competing for that backup job, who comes out on top. And, I'm sure you would have asked Huntley before the season if he'd ever expect to be on the field. And he definitely would have told you no, but due to the coronavirus, he and other injuries as well. I mean, it wasn't even the coronavirus; it was injuries to both McSorley and RG3. He got his opportunity, so I'm happy for him. And you don't see that too often, but glad that he got an opportunity to go out there and show us what he can do.
All right, let's look at the road ahead. There's 2 games left in the NFL season, the regular season. You got another weird week this week. You got Friday football, you got Christmas football, you got Saturday football, and then, of course, Sunday and Monday football. 4 straight days of football this weekend. If that interests you at all, it probably should. We're all big NFL fans, but the Ravens will have their eyes on one of those Saturday matchups as the Raiders take on the Dolphins. The Dolphins are one of the teams ahead of the Ravens in the wild card hunt. To kind of sum up this playoff race, Ravens need to win their remaining 2 games, and they need just one loss. Just one, not from each team, just from any team, whether it be the Dolphins, the Browns, or the Colts. It's getting a little dicey, and this has been a big point of discussion, but and it's a scary thing to talk about, the thought of it happening, because we do have an extra playoff team this year. There is 7 teams that will make it from each conference, and it is still very possible. It is not a huge stretch at all, with only 2 weeks left, to say that the Ravens could go 11-5 and miss the playoffs, even with an extra wildcard team. That would be heartbreaking. It would be crushing. And I think the NFL, by no means, the NFL of all people should not want that to happen, because it's going to put them in a real tough spot if they've got to sit there and say, all right, this is probably an anomaly. A team that wins 11 games is missing the playoffs, but we did add an extra spot this year, and they still missed it. But at the same time, on the other side of the league, the NFC, somebody from the NFC East is going to make the playoffs and host a playoff game because they win their division with a losing record. It's just the NFL doesn't want to have to deal with that. So, but even so, 11 wins, the Ravens might not make it at 11 wins. Somebody for sure is not going to make it at 10 wins. I think we could say that. I mean, somebody could lose both their games left. I guess the Dolphins could lose both their games. Really, any of the 9-5 teams could lose both their games left. Technically, probably not going to happen, but technically they could. In all reality, someone's going to miss the playoffs at 10-6, which is, even by itself, is pretty insane. So, Jake, how concerned are you with 2 weeks left? The Ravens need some help in addition to winning out. Could we really see the Ravens miss the playoffs with 11 wins?
We absolutely could. There are a bunch of different scenarios. Just simply put, the Ravens need to win out. And like you said, the Steelers need at least one win. Either of those wins would be against the Colts, and they would go to Cleveland next weekend. Also, Tennessee is playing Green Bay on Sunday night. And if Tennessee loses that game, I believe, they have to lose to both the Green Bay and the Texans. Both those games are on the road for them. The Browns need to lose one either to the Jets or the Steelers. The Colts need to lose to either the Steelers, the Jags, or the Dolphins, as you said, need to lose today. There's so many different scenarios, and really, I mean, we're probably not going to know a clear picture. I don't even know if we're going to know anything on Sunday. I mean, I guess maybe depending on what happens in that Dolphins game, we just have to, play it by ear and wait and see how it goes. I do think the Dolphins will definitely lose one of their games, though. I mean, at Vegas and at Buffalo to finish the year, I definitely think Week 17, assuming Buffalo has something to play for still by that point, and with everything happening in the AFC North right now, I definitely do think they would be in terms of seeding goes. So by Sunday, there is a decent chance that the Ravens will now control their own destiny, will control their own destinies just simply if they win out. So hopefully that's the case. It is certainly possible, though, and really does make for an interesting NFL playoff discussion with everything going on and the expanding teams and everything like that. It's definitely going to make that more interesting as we go along. But another interesting, I don't know about you, but there is a very real possibility now that the Browns will win the division. You look at the Steelers. They have to, they have to beat Indy and Cleveland, and that's not an easy task, especially considering how the Steelers look right now. I am actively rooting for the Browns to win the AFC North, and it has nothing to do with my hatred for the Steelers. In fact, it has everything to do with my hatred for the Browns, and here's why. If the Browns win the division, they will either A, host their first home playoff game in over 2 decades, probably longer, with probably 20,000 fans there, so they won't even be able to have a full stadium, or B, which would be the even better possibility, in my opinion, the NFL bubbleizes the playoffs. They can't even host a home playoff game. Can you imagine how hilarious that would be if that happened? I would never stop laughing if that happened. I hope the NFL bubbleizes the playoffs. I don't think they will at this point because there hasn't been a catastrophic virus outbreak. Once the playoffs begins, I hope they have a backup plan, assuming there are no breakouts, because what happens if a breakout happens? So I don't know what's going to happen in terms of the Browns in terms of whether they're going to play at home or not. But regardless, even if they do play that home game in Cleveland, if they win the division, they will still not be able to have a home stadium full of fans. And that, my friends, is about the funniest shit ever.
It is pretty funny, but I got to be honest, if the Browns pass the Steelers and the Steelers get downgraded to a wild card team, it's not good for the Ravens. They don't have any tiebreaker there. They got swept by Pittsburgh. Obviously there's other teams. The Colts, the Dolphins could be overtaken by the Ravens head-to-head against the Colts. Dolphins, same record with a tougher schedule. So it's not like you would completely shut down your only road into the playoffs, but I don't know. It would technically make it a little bit harder for the Ravens to get in. But I think we all want to see.
I'm willing to put up with that stress. If it means Browns fans are that miserable, I'm willing to put up with it.
I think we would all like to see best case scenario. Look, best case scenario, Vegas beats the Dolphins on Saturday. And you go, like I said, you go into Sunday, Ravens know they control their own destiny. And you don't even have to worry about rooting for Pittsburgh for 1 second. You can just full-on root for their demise at that point if Vegas takes care of business. And look, I think everyone around the league wants to see a Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns matchup in Week 17 that is for the division. I would love nothing more. That's got game of the year potential, and I know the Ravens just played the game of the year against Cleveland. For the Browns to be on the brink of maybe winning the division for the first time in forever against Pittsburgh, who's always been like the big bad bully to them, that would be insane. I'm moderately nervous, I'll say. If, like I said, if the Raiders can't beat the Dolphins, I'm going to get a little more worried because the Steelers do not look good at all. They look really bad. Juju and Claypool and some of these other guys are running their mouth. I mean, who was the defensive player that tweeted out before the second Ravens game that, this is an easy one, boys, go out there and pad the stats, something like that.
It might have been, was it Pouncey? I don't think it was Pouncey. It was like a veteran player, I feel like.
Some defensive player who wasn't playing.
Tuitt, maybe? I feel like it was a veteran. I could be wrong.
I think it was Tuitt, Stephon Tuitt.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Claypool, not as bad, but still pretty funny, tweeting out, when they won, 11 games in a row, said losing, never heard of her, or something like that. That's not that bad. That's a fun little tweet, but then you lose 3 in a row. It's going to come back at you. And then Juju with the dancing and the TikTok and all this nonsense, getting blown up. Damn, I can't remember the name of the defensive player, but credit to him. But that was a great, well-timed play.
I think his last name was Bell.
Yes, Bell.
I don't know his first name. His last name was Bell.
Yeah.
Von Bell, maybe?
Who knows?
Something like that.
Credit to him. One of the most satisfying clean hits I've seen in the NFL in a long time. Perfectly timed, perfectly executed, knocked the ball loose to force an incompletion. And just all the subsequent memes and videos that have come from that has been extremely satisfying. So Pittsburgh does not look good. They look like huge frauds. They're not doing anything right. I think opposing defenses are finally catching on to that little quick release that Big Ben's been doing all year. And we know they can't run the ball. James Conner was downgraded to out for the last game. So they don't even have that talented of a running back group, and they haven't really committed to the run at all this year to begin with. So they're in trouble. Pittsburgh's in big trouble. I mean, they're in the playoffs. They've secured a spot, but they're in big trouble, and I think they could be a first-round exit easily. Whether they host a game or go on the road, doesn't matter.
You kind of said it all there. I mean, just to elaborate on my TikTok comment earlier, I've seen TikTok in like group chats, people sending them. I feel like I might have downloaded it once to be actually able to view them on my phone. But if you're as obsessed with like your social media following as Juju Smith-Schuster is, to the point where before you go out to play an NFL game and you're so focused on just dancing on a logo for your social media following, I feel sorry for him. And didn't Tomlin learn his lesson before about what the guys doing this stuff on social media? I'm surprised he hasn't try to get more in front of this. Maybe it's kind of like a thing where he doesn't want to seem like too much of a like an authority figure. He doesn't want to seem too much of a guy that has all these strict rules. I don't know if it's just like a weird age gap too, where he might just say like, okay, he's in his 20s. This is just what he likes to do. I don't really bother it, blah, blah, blah. But the fact is, if Bengals players, see that and it's being posted everywhere, it's going to piss them off. So like, and to Tomlin to sit there after the game and say that he didn't think, to call all the players, all these guys are professionals. And I just don't think that, the dance had any impact on the motivation. Like, come on, man. Like I know it has nothing to do with the football game itself, but just look from like human motivation and taking things personal from that standpoint. Like to not see this coming, it really, it's not just a football player thing too. Like it's a generational thing. Like, I'm sorry. Like if you doesn't matter who you are, if like the majority of your day is spent staring at your phone screen, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, I'm sorry. I feel bad for you. Like I really do. And that's all I'll say.
I don't disagree. And I think really, I haven't seen really anyone kind of defending Juju here, but there has been a few kind of, how it is, as you just said, with social media, the contrarian takes. And I've seen some people saying, well, how can you have a problem doing something to, advertise and improve his personal brand moving forward? Like, this is about life after football.
Just don't do it on the field. Why does it have to be on the field? Like,
exactly. It's like, what? And also, when did everything become about personal brand? When did that overtake winning football games? When did that overtake winning basketball games? And like, if you're one of the best players in the NBA and you want to wear whatever the hell you want after the game and show off your fancy designer fashion and whatever, and you're winning games and you're, lighting it up, that's great. That's awesome. Like last year, look at the Ravens last year. They win all these games doing the big trust stuff. Mark Ingram's, the class clown, so to speak, hyping everyone up, just all these great fun moments, but they're winning games. And then they lost in the playoffs. And the Titans player went up to the podium and mocked the big trust thing. Good. Like that's how it goes. If you're winning games and you're playing well and you're doing this, it's a fun thing on the side. But when you start losing games and it starts to become the forefront of the conversation, it's not good. It's a negative. Ravens game. Said enough there about everyone else besides the Ravens. They're playing the Giants. Couple weeks ago, looking down the stretch, this game stood out as maybe the toughest, besides Cleveland, obviously. I want to say that. Cleveland was clearly the toughest game, but of the games where we knew the Ravens were expected and heavily favored to win, the Giants one posed probably the biggest threat because a couple weeks ago it looked like they were on the come up and they might be winning that division. Looks like Washington still has the one up on them. But as far as this matchup this week, the Giants have been coming back down to earth. Daniel Jones goes out with an injury, so I think that's certainly a big factor. Colt McCoy is out there, but they have been really bad the last 2 weeks. I mean, they got beat up by the Browns. They got beat up by Arizona, and really they just didn't put up a fight in either game. It was really embarrassing. So I'm not concerned about this game at all. I think they pose a bigger threat than Jacksonville, certainly, and they'll pose a bigger threat than the Bengals will. But it's not kind of the upset scare that I think we might have had a couple weeks ago. When you don't have your starting quarterback, you don't have one of the best running backs in the league in Saquon Barkley, you're not going to be good. So, yeah, the Ravens are going to win this game. I trust the Ravens to get the job done. They control their own destiny. They showed against Jacksonville that they're not going to play down to an inferior opponent. And as a matter of fact, they're going to run up the score and they're going to blow that team out.
So, yeah, I agree that in terms of, the what do you want to call them? The unmighty three, last regular season games for the Ravens that were all expected to be pretty big wins. I agree. This is the game that presents the biggest challenge, quote unquote, because the Giants, even if they're not a juggernaut or a team above 500 for that matter, they're a physical team and they'll beat you up. They'll hang with you. So I do think that unlike last week, I think maybe the first half could maybe be a little tug and pull. I mean, I still think the Ravens will have the lead for most of, if not all of the game. But I do think that the Giants maybe prevent the Ravens from jumping ahead until late second, early third quarter. But I still think that the Ravens don't have any issues getting past New York here. I'm going to go 30-16 Ravens, and hopefully by the Sunday at 4 p.m., all the Ravens have to do next weekend is win in Cincinnati, and then they will be in the playoffs. So hopefully we see that happen, and that'll be the perfect way to cap off a socially distant Christmas weekend for most people.
I don't have a score. I like Jake's score. I'm not going to steal it, but I think that sounds around there. That sounds pretty good to me. Yeah, and real quick, looking at the Giants' schedule, they did win 4 in a row, which is why everyone was so scared prior to these last 2 weeks where they lost to Arizona and Cleveland. They had won 4 in a row against Washington, Philadelphia, Cincinnati. Again, not super impressive, but they got that 4th win, 17-12 over the Seahawks, and that was in Seattle. So I think at that point everyone was like, they seem to be emerging as the clear-cut best team in the NFC East, and they could give the Ravens a run for their money, but they come back down to earth. And it has to do with Daniel Jones being out, and that is certainly a factor, but their coaching is not good. They left points off the board against the Browns. They passed up on field goal opportunities, left points off the board. I'm not saying they would have won kicking field goals, but they could have, it could have been closer late in the game, and then, that changes the game plan for both teams. I don't have to explain that to you. It's basic football. That's episode 133. We'll be here next week. Enjoy your Christmas, everyone. And enjoy it however you're celebrating, and enjoy the Ravens game on Sunday. Hopefully have a clearer picture of how this playoff race is playing out, but might also be sweating it out. If the Steelers can't win or the Raiders can't win, things will be getting a little dicey next week, so we'll see. But fingers crossed. We'll talk to you then.